So nursing associates, now this is an HEE invention, because remember Jeremy Hunt's got to meet his 10,000, and let's remember those 10,000 nurses, funnily enough, they're not all going to be registered nurses, because the numbers for nursing associates is going up, absolutely, it's rocketing up, even though we haven't evaluated the first cohort, because that's what we do in healthcare. We launch something brand new, and then we roll it right out. I've still got the scars from implementing Project 2000. And we roll it right out before we actually work out to see if it works.
It's different to assistant practitioner.
Yes, it is. It is. So.
Because STH, we're piloting the tax.
Oh, we are. So what happened was that.
They'll have your head off.
Yeah. So what happened to STH? Well, what happened in South Yorkshire? I spent 2 years convincing the organisation that we needed to introduce an assistant practitioner role. Nursing associates weren't around by then. 2 years it took to actually get the whole thing up and running across South Yorkshire, get the money from HEE, get it all done, finally we get it up and running, and all the rest of it. And just as we were getting started, the nursing associate came on. So that was the reason for that, because there wasn't a nursing associate, and then of course the nursing associate came along, and that is the HEE route because it's nursing. It's about nursing. So these are designed to bridge the gap between healthcare assistants and the registered nurse in England. So they're going to be, that's the spiel from NHS England about what they do. And as you can see, they'll work within teams, direct or indirect supervision. Now remember, indirect supervision means working on their own out in the community, delivering aspects of care and all the rest of them. And the expansion numbers now is that the third wave that's just coming out for bids now is another 5,000 this year, and next year it's an additional 7,500. Remember the 10,000, that's what actually has to be delivered on this. And of course, because they've come on stream very, very quickly, the NMC have now been asked to regulate them. Little comments like, aren't we just reinventing the enrolled nurse? Couldn't possibly comment. Different part of the register, 2-year training, well, you know, you work it out. What it is doing, very interestingly, is it is very quickly giving a career route through to support workers who are able to do more. It's never been that easy for support workers to get onto pre-registration unless they either have the qualifications or are prepared to sort of take out the student loan and all the rest of it. And I'll come on to show you about how it looks like we're getting quite a number of different routes. So actually, the numbers of nursing associates nationally going straight onto pre-registration is already 60%, so not a huge.
You just get all your mature students.
And that's the other thing it's doing. It's a very successful route for mature. It's great from the point of view that actually you've got a progression route. Most of them are going into band 4s. It's part of the Agenda for Change we've not used very much. But equally, organisations have been very slow, because they're very bad at workforce planning and development, to work out how to employ these individuals to the best effect. Now, actually, all of this starts to make sense when I go through some of the other roles, because actually I think we need to see this a bit differently. But they are coming on stream in spades, and so these really are the new kids on the block, and they are here to stay. So I think that's the first thing we need to say.
They can give medicines as well, can't they?
Only under protocol at the moment. But once
That's one of the difficulties with our assistant practitioners, because they take the role of a nurse, they delegate to two patients as a qualified would be. The only thing that they're not allowed to do is administer medication.
And that's right.
So then they then say to the qualified working alongside them with their two patients, can you administer their medication? You don't know their patients, you don't know their history, you've not listened to the report, and you're coming along and giving some medication. I think that's
but they are accountable to the registered practitioner, so actually the registered practitioner does need to know those patients well enough. ITU is actually an area where assistant practitioners doesn't work particularly well because of the huge volume of medication.
The number of errors that I've seen, medication errors, because of that.
And that's actually about how that's been set up, actually. So because we have the same thing with physicians associates, and it's all about medication. Well, you have to organise yourself so that actually people are being able to do what their job is supposed to do. And actually, in this case, they are not substitutes. And if people are using them as substitutes, they will run into problems when it comes to medication. Now, assistant practitioners, how we've defined it now, because obviously now we've got the nursing associate, assistant practitioners will be everybody else. So assistant practitioners, physiotherapy, occupational therapy, ODPs. In fact, ODPs is a really good place to have assistant practitioners because it's hard to recruit workforce in theatres because very few people know what they do. You know, radiographers in terms of that sort of thing. You know, when I first met my husband, he was an ODA, so because theatres is my background, so actually I've seen how that, you know, that profession's sort of very much grown over the years. But and it does tend to recruit from its own, and it'll be a good route. So all the other professions at Band 4, if you like, will have the assistant practitioner route. Nursing will have the nursing associate route, and they will be distinct roles from that point of view. They all critically access the apprenticeship levy. So that's why it's popular.
What about midwifery? Is it looking like?
Ah, now that's an interesting one, because midwifery stayed right out of it up until now. Apart from yesterday, when I was at the Nurse Executive Group, where I was listening to a paper about the midwifery workforce and the fact that the midwifery support worker, I think Leeds have just withdrawn the programme for them. So actually, Sheffield Hallam, there's a discussion that happened with Sheffield Hallam about that, and I immediately spotted that actually they can do that as an apprenticeship. And actually, we found the standard last night, so I'll talk to Paul about that. The standard's already in train. So actually, they'll be able to do it through an apprenticeship as well. So it's all there. So basically, if it moves, it's an apprenticeship. So, physicians associates, very much new kids on the block, only they're not. Of course, they've been around for flipping decades, but not in the UK. And of course, being the UK, we're highly suspicious. So there we are. So to put not too fine a point on it, we're desperately short of junior doctors because in hospitals, because of the reduction in junior doctors in training. That was a very deliberate move because they wanted them all, and also they wanted more going into GP practices. And junior doctors are going into GP practices, but not in the north of England. So we're desperately short. We desperately need somebody to do the work. The physicians associates, as you can see, are trained. They are part of the medical workforce. They are there to support the doctors. But do you know what? We don't know what they look like. We don't know what they are. You know, they come from a different place, and therefore we don't trust it. So we're in a very unenviable position at the moment where Health Education England supported, I think, 40 trainee physicians associates, all of whom are rolling off of both these universities here, and only a third have got jobs, even though we desperately need them. Because what we never do is work through the transition piece about how we change our workforce design to ensure people can do it. And again, the thing is, they can't prescribe, but they study advanced pharmacology. And actually, again, the way in which you organise your workforce, so GP practices have snapped them up because they've been able to see how to organise themselves, how to use them. They're a fantastic workforce, we've just got to get over ourselves. So, you know, we've got all of that going on. So very different, and they're a very stable workforce. Again, when you think about the churn with your juniors and your specialty trainees, you know, to have a workforce that doesn't turn over every 3 months, my goodness, that makes a difference. So you imagine a ward-based scenario where you've got a physician's associate that's ward-based doing all the tasks. It frees your junior, so you're not waiting for a junior to, you know, 6 hours later to come back. The PA can have a look at that patient and then alert if necessary. So it's all about how you
That's
organise.
having a huge impact on our students in terms of their experience when on placement, not in GP but in hospital. So, you know, I've had some that have had a really fantastic experience, and they're like, especially if there's a PA working already.
Yeah, that's
so,
right.
So Megan in gynae oncology, she's a PA, and when people have worked with her, they have such a satisfying experience because she knows who she is, she knows what she does, she's built a relationship with people. And then I've had people feedback, and this is happening more often than not, where they're saying, I'm having to, every day I go in, I have to explain who I am and what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And if, you know, if the consultants don't recognise the importance of their role, or, you know, that it's valuable, then they get overlooked for the junior medical officers because they seem to be the more important.
And it is just work in progress. It's very early days. We're not good in healthcare at new role development.
Yeah.
We say we need it, we say we're up for it, we see all the potential, we're desperate for workforce, but if you're not the same as me, I can't trust you. So we've really got to get past ourselves, and I expect paramedics have had a very similar experience when they've gone out into working in different settings.
You should have an ambulance driver.
That's right.
Yeah.
So it will come, but it's we're a very, very resistant.
I've seen these through our skills and simulation centre at Exeter, and people refer to them as failed doctors. So failed med, the med students that failed, so they've come back.
I mean,
Hugely impacting on their identity, I think.
yeah, I'm sure it is actually.
Just need to get out there, don't they, and show people what they
Well,
can
but
do.
it's also the fact that actually, and again, because we're doing this at such scale and such pace, we forget that if you are developing new roles, those pioneer practitioners need loads of support wrapped around them. They need good buddies, good mentors, good supervision. Because otherwise they will fail, and we can't afford for that to happen. Yes.
This might be a foul, but because I come from Kenya, the background where we didn't have so many physicians and doctors, we had what we called clinical officers. I don't know whether it's the same, but they were trained just the way the doctors are trained. They could manage clinics, they could manage wards and manage, because the consultant were far and fed.
Yeah.
One consultant, the consultant in the whole hospital. So they had to have clinical officers.
It might be a similar, type of, but yeah.
Lots and lots of clinical officers that managed as medical practitioners because we couldn't afford to train as many doctors.
And you've hit a really good point, because actually some of this is going to be about affordability, isn't it? That actually, if we've got, I'm not going to go into it today, but if you look at the statistics now about our ageing population, our sicker population, our population with comorbidities, we've now got, for the first time, as you know, the next generation's health is actually going to be worse than the previous generation's, not better. You know, smoking, substance misuse, alcohol, really high levels of obesity. This is in young people. Their health is actually worse than the previous generation. We're absolutely storing all of this up. So actually, we can't afford the traditional model anyway, and we don't need it. It's the wrong model. So actually, having those sorts of things, very often, things have to move in there. So the next role.
Got 15.
I'll try. Is advanced practitioners, and again, so these are nurses, these are really experienced nurses, you've probably come across many of these, we've been training these at a rate of knots as well, and again, we don't know what to do with them when we're training them. Hugely successful roles, can, manage own caseloads and all the rest of it. Very often they can, so for example, hospital at night, they can go onto the rota, they've got full prescribing, all of that sort of thing, but, well, what are we supposed to do with them? So actually, again, huge frustration, masses going into primary care.
Just very quick and tonight, short time. Do you think is it not knowing what to do with them, or fear of delegating what you do to somebody else and giving up part of your role?
Probably a combination of both. But actually, we desperately need this workforce because they're worth their weight in gold. The difficulty, of course, is that we are taking them from the existing nursing workforce that we're short of next, because we're short. Generation Z. Well, here we go. You've probably seen this slide before. This is work that was done actually in the West Midlands, and very much categorises those generations along there. And you can read that for yourself, but it doesn't take much to work out that, of course, the NHS is still being, there's still a fair number of baby boomers hanging around. I'm one of them. Wouldn't have counted myself as a baby boomer, but apparently I am in there, having been born in 1960. But actually, of course, most of our health services are pretty well being run by Generation X. And of course, the generation that's coming into us now, we've got a lot of Ys now in the workforce, but it's the Zs that are coming. They are looking for a very, very different work and career experience to their previous generations, but of course the previous generations are the ones who are their managers, their supervisors and their mentors. And we're going to have to change our game. So I still come across attitudes all the time, which is, this is healthcare, you just need to get on with it. This is not what's going to keep the new generation in healthcare. They've come in to make a difference. It fits with their values. The trouble is, once they get into it, they don't like what they see. Because as we know, not all of our staff live and breathe the values they're supposed to. We've still got an attitude towards students that actually says you're just in the way. Our students are like gold dust. We need to treat them like the golden egg. They are our future workforce, and without them, we are stuffed. So I can't make it clearer than that. You know, for so long, the relationship has been very much that we're doing students a favour just by having them around. That we have got to treat them as our most precious commodity in the entire world. Next one, please.
I think it's changing
Because they want this.
the students now are paying for their
Exactly.
training, so
Yeah.
they're coming, they're
Absolutely.
wanting a good clinical environment in which to learn,
Absolutely.
and quality mentorship, and they're
Yeah.
paying for it.
And that goes right back to my first slide about how they're changing the relationships. So you've got that with the Generation Z stuff as well. They want this. They need lots of feedback. They need lots of support. They need lots of nurturing. It's our fault. I have a Generation Z in my household. We've done it to them. We've done it to them because actually we've brought them up to give them feedback about everything. Now, of course, my son's growing up. I mean, when I see sort of, I was in the supermarket, just because some child's picked something up, oh, that's lovely, darling, well done. He's just picked something up. The fact is that we congratulate our children for putting one foot in front of the other. And to a certain extent, we've got the product of that, whereas actually, I don't remember, it certainly wasn't how I was brought up. But the fact is, of course, because they're expecting that, and they have very much social media endorses that, all the rest of it, they absolutely need that wraparound in order to succeed, and we've got to find a better way of doing this, because otherwise we're going to lose them. And, because as you said, they've paid for this, they've come wanting to make a difference, have a different experience. Sadly, what we're generally offering them is more of the same, and that's difficult because obviously workplaces are terribly pressured. The worry is, of course, this is the workforce we need because we're short of a workforce. Being short of a workforce means we don't give students the time and attention that we need. Next one, please. So, I don't need to tell you that. You know all that. This is absolutely what needs to be there. Career development is now becoming the name of the game. They're looking for flexibility in working patterns. They want different experience. They do want flexibility. If they're saying, actually, I only want to work 20 hours a week, you're going to have to take them for 20 hours a week. So the whole other days, we've still got things which is it's full-time or the highway. Actually, lots and lots of these. Because actually, we've got newly qualified who, yes, they want to practice nursing or their chosen healthcare profession, but actually at the same time, they might be doing some sort of vocational course somewhere else because they feel like doing that. We've noticed actually, it was a conversation the other day, a huge number of student doctors are taking a career break at the end of F2 before doing specialty training to go off and have a year off before they come back, which they never used to do before. And I think a lot of other professions are going to be doing the same thing. It's a very different life. Next. So, absolutely the key to this is about creating positive placements wherever they will be. And that means a bigger range of placements, far more places than we ever thought. This is part of the nursing expansion anyway, but it's absolutely key. Next, please. So, just moving us on into some of the other bits that's in this changing landscape. I thought I'd just throw that one up, which is around primary care transformation, because all of this is about the fact that if we don't get primary care right, it's no point reforming hospital services, community services and all the rest of it. Patients will always default to hospital if they haven't got primary care. And part of that transformation in new role development is actually about completely changing, and this is the strategy we've got for South Yorkshire at the moment, that the old model, as you can see, 4 GPs to 2 practice nurses to 1 HCA, that was your classic GP practice model. The problem is we can't get GPs for love nor money. It isn't just the fact that that model was probably wrong, we can't get them. So actually what's moving into the breach, this is where all our advanced practitioners are going, is into GP surgeries, it's also where the PAs are going, because what they're wanting to see, as you can see, is a huge move across into having 1 GP to 2 advanced practitioners and then better trained clinical and care assistants there as well. So their expansion plans or their workforce figures moving forward should really be creating quite a lot of a buzz, because the vast majority of those people are currently working in our hospitals and community settings where we would say we can't afford to lose them. On the other hand, if primary care doesn't have them, everybody will default into our services anyway. So I think the thing that I would probably say, and I say this to lots of groups actually, because I wear lots of different hats. One of the biggest myths we've got at the moment is that actually we're short of workforce here, but you know over there, they've got loads. So we'll have theirs. And my big thing at the moment is nobody's got loads of workforce. Everywhere's got gaps. Everywhere's got challenges. There is not a workforce in a cupboard you can just open up and bring in. But I have frequent conversations with very experienced, knowledgeable people who honestly don't think that's the case. And primary care is a really good case in point, because primary care expects to get most of that workforce out of secondary care. Next. So I just wanted to give you a quick run through about apprenticeships. Going back to the levy, this is what an apprentice does. So as you can see, the key thing is that the key things about apprenticeships, they are your employees. They're not students, they're your employees, you're responsible for them, they're on your payroll. So all the normal checks and balances, mandatory training, all the rest of it applies to the apprentice as well. Depending on what type of apprenticeship they're on, they all have to have release to complete their college qualification, and there should be a reasonable expectation that they're going to have a job at the end of it. So they're all paid an apprenticeship wage during their training, and the ones we've been used to, of course, tend to be at band 2, and it's a very successful model. But the levy and this huge workforce expansion, of course, has absolutely blown that out of the water. So the next one, please. Because this is the levy. I did have a slide on the levy. So that's actually the levy, which, as I have just indicated, it's not straightforward. The digital account is difficult to access, although we've managed it now. It works well enough for the traditional level 2, but what's happened, of course, is that we've now got a massive explosion of apprenticeships at higher level, which is normally band 4, and a degree level, to really try and maximise the levy and to try and maximise the workforce issues. But there's very complex procurement rules, and the employer takes on all of the costs. Yes?
Do you know, because employers are putting into this levy now, is that having an effect on what they're doing for their already established workforce? Because people,
Yes.
I know people are leaving practice because they feel like they're stuck, they've got nowhere to go, because the management or the department director at the teaching hospital, where won't support them to progress because they've not got the money.
They haven't, you're right, but it falls into a different category, which is, some of you might know that there's something called SSPRD, which is the specialist support staff. That's actually seen 2 successive years of a 40% cut. So actually the first thing is that money isn't there to support anything other than the essential. In fact, I'm going to Trust Executive Group, my last Trust Executive Group meeting in a fortnight, which is to give them the risk factors in that, which is to say, if it's cut again this year, it's going to cut out all of these things, and this time you're going to have to find contingency money to meet that because it's job specific, neonatal course being absolutely the case in point. Why?
Isn't it, we use it for men?
See, that's why I've got my practice deciding what to pursue an educational role, but they wouldn't support me in any way, shape or form.
No, because actually we can only support people who are skills development for the job that they're doing, so we've always expected people to...
Yeah, within physical care it's a different sort of thing. We've got our own little money part, there's actually clinical educators based on there. We have a secondment role, that you can get secondments out into acute pain team, but just because we were so short on staff.
Yeah. And that's the other factor. It isn't just the money, it's the release. The release is virtually impossible.
We felt the effect of the SSPRD for this very course, because we didn't get funded for it.
No, and this is...
the start of the course because of that.
This course suffered, the leadership management course suffered, the money we've got, as you know, Helen in my department, and this is a very strict TNA, it's really tight. And the trouble is, you see, is that lots of money that's funded support staff isn't there now because the levy's supposed to pay for it, and we'll never get that back again.
Yeah, it's quite tough because we interviewed for the clinical educator job, and then we couldn't get on this course to support us to do the job.
I know.
So then we missed the start, didn't we? And then we managed to get funding through like education from IT.
Yeah.
You have to find, don't you? Everything's a battle.
Yeah,
But
we
if I
funding for it,
can
so we missed
say-
the beginning, and then we managed to get on.
If I can say, when I did my masters, which was 100 years ago now, I got the contribution I got was £400 from my employer. I got the rest through various charitable funds, paid myself and did the rest of it. To be honest, it's only been the last 15 years or so that most things have been funded. The trouble is we've got very used to it, and of course we are in a vicious circle now. It's essential we've got it to incentivise the workforce to stay with us, but actually we can't release the workforce anyway because it's really difficult, and we've lost it centrally, so we can't put it back because the trusts haven't got any money. It's a really difficult one.
I mean, I was at your talk when you came to the faculty the other day, so I kind of benefited from some of the background. Doesn't this go against the new philosophy, which is around the transformation of the workforce? Because obviously that's one of the key streams that you discussed when you talked about the new system, was that it's not about CPD, it's about this transformation and looking at the possibilities. So doesn't this sort of directly conflict with that in terms of what the HEE and the government...
Oh, well, they've squared that in their own minds because that's new workforce. They're only interested in new workforce. Now, funnily enough, at the Health Select Committee yesterday, because I saw the items that were going there, there's been huge lobbying around the loss of what's the CPD funding, which we call SSPRD. So I'm hoping that actually, because finally they've realised, flipping heck, the workforce that we're transforming is already working with us. Of course it is. It's not all about new workforce. It has to be about developing the staff we've got. It's so easy for me to say standing here, but actually the trouble is we very rarely work through all the knock-on consequences, and we've got multiple agendas going on all the time at the moment. And there is only so much in the public pot, although sometimes with looking at what it's spent on, sometimes you do wonder. So it is about the priorities. So it is very, very difficult. But as I said, the difficulty here with the levy is, of course, when you start using it for higher apprenticeships and degree-level apprenticeships, it gets very expensive. The release is really expensive. They're all your employees. It's the reason we're not pursuing the degree-level apprenticeship, even though it would benefit the mature students, because the cost to the employer is massive at a time when actually trusts are broke. So we really are in a double bind on this. Next one, please. So that's the higher level apprenticeship, which is the assistant practitioners and nursing associates, and that tells you about the programme that we're currently running. And as I talked about the national one, and the next one, please. The degree level apprenticeships, these are all under development, although some of them are already approved now. So nursing's approved, the NMC has approved that one. I think that the degree level apprenticeships will probably look very similar to the OU programmes. The students that we've got on OU programmes, the difference being the OU, the students self-fund, and the apprenticeship, obviously you use the levy. The other worry is, of course, is that remember, once you start using the levy for degree level apprenticeships, it's the £9,000 fee. It will very quickly bust the top of the pot.
Is that going to be spread to all?
Pretty much every profession. It'll probably be a fairly popular route for paramedics, actually. They're looking at that one at the moment, and ODPs again. Healthcare scientists have actually got a whole career pathway now, at level 2, level 4 and degree level as well. So they've done really well because that was a very endangered profession because of all of the changes in modernising scientific careers. It might well be popular with nursing associates who in some trusts have developed a strategy where they're saying, they're doing literally, in other words, what some trusts, the ones that have got no staff whatsoever, are bringing staff in to say, right, you do your level 2 apprenticeship, your higher apprenticeship and your degree apprenticeship with us because the trust owns them. So going back to that fractured relationship, while this is very expensive, if you are a trust like the one that I saw being presented, which is on the outskirts of London, very deprived bit of London, never found it easy to attract workforce anyway, can't even get agency staff, what choice have you got? And actually they want to grow their own workforce, they feel far better off doing that. So you can see that actually everything costs money, doesn't it? It's just about where the priorities actually are. So, in terms of the rest of our support workers, and again in the landscape, we've developed, we've been approved by the National Skills Academy for Health to be a Health Excellence Centre in South Yorkshire, and that's taking off really well indeed, particularly as part of the accountable care system. So this is part of our work, developing apprenticeships and support worker training across the whole of South Yorkshire, sharing standards, sharing initiatives, working with care homes, all of that sort of thing as well. We're developing an e-hub at the moment, very much forging links with employers, so again, trying to get some quite good bit of energy into that. So in terms of future workforce, which is a major work stream for the Excellence Centre, I think this is the other thing really to talk about with the changing landscape. Going back to the Generation Z and looking at that slide I gave you about the workforce picture for the country, you'd believe that we're probably going to need to employ about 3/4 of school leavers into the NHS and health and social care in the future if we're not to fall over. And it's not going to happen, is it? But at the same time, actually, there is a new careers strategy for schools that's actually going to put careers ambassadors in. And through the Excellence Centre, we very quickly linked in with them to actually say, can we piggyback on that, making sure that school children are very familiar with what's available to them in the NHS and the routes in. Because I think very often it's overwhelming. If you're not going to be a nurse or a doctor, they don't really know what else to do. So a lot of this is about engagement with schools, about ensuring that schools are actually appraised of apprenticeships. That's difficult because schools are also being targeted by higher education to say, come into higher education. So actually some schools are quite reluctant to promote apprenticeships, so that's a bit of an issue. Really what we call industrialising work experience. Until you've spent a week working in healthcare, how do you know what all the different jobs are and everything that goes with that? Yes.
My daughter actually wants to work in healthcare when she's 15. We've got that exact problem, getting her into healthcare because she's under 16.
Yeah, because the safeguarding means we can't put them into clinical areas, but as soon as she's 16 she can. I know, we've got this all the time. Internships, those are now becoming part of it. We do supported internships for students with additional needs. They've been really successful. Using social media to promote the values of the NHS. In other words, that the NHS has got to be absolutely out there talking to schools and the future is about actually how important it is, because my God, we need them all. Whether they come as an apprentice, whether they come into the higher education route, we need all of them. Next. And that's the other thing, which is this landscape is so complicated that actually we absolutely need to ensure that we've got individual career mapping for our potential staff and our actual staff, because the routes are really complicated. So if you do want to get into pre-registration at the moment, given the fact, so actually the next slide will actually illustrate this. So this is a slide that NHS employers have done. So once upon a time, if you wanted to get into nursing, you applied to pre-registration and off you went. And now, as you can see, you can come in, obviously through your university degree, your postgraduate diploma, if you've already got a degree, and we're trying to find these people in our organisation to encourage them to do the postgraduate diploma. The trouble is ESR doesn't record the fact they've got a degree because they don't need it for the job they're doing as a support worker. So we're trying to track people down and do a bit of an advertising campaign. Return to practice, which for us was a complete disaster, and we're not doing it again because it resulted in about 3 people who joined our workforce, because quite honestly there was a reason why you left in the first place. And when you see how acute it is now, you sort of turn around and say, oh no, I think I'll go and do something else. But actually, apparently we have got, this is interesting, I didn't know this till some of my team told me this the other day, we have got a range of nurses working as support workers whose registration lapsed and they've taken time out, and rather than come the return to practice route, they've decided to come and work with us as a support worker to get their skills back up. So we're thinking we might do return to practice for that group because they're already with us, to get them back as registered practitioners. So the thing, we'll do anything now, won't we? The other thing, though, of course, from this university, you've also got the foundation degree in health and social care that's running out of 7 further education colleges, which is also the route through nursing associates. The international recruitment, the nursing apprenticeship degree, they're going to have to put nursing associates on here quite soon to get them in that way. So you can suddenly see the landscape is exploding. So we've absolutely got to find ways of helping people to map their way through this. So, in summary, last slide. That's what it feels like, isn't it? And we've got to get to the top. We can't fall off halfway. We can't stop that climb. We've got to get to the top because we need the services more than ever before. But all of those services are predicated on workforce. The workforce challenges have never been more challenging than that climb up the side of the mountain. But actually, we've got to make it work, haven't we? So I'll leave it there. I don't know if there's any time for